Hello everyone, it is Joe here from OmniPoke, the channel that brings you guys everything Pokemon. If you're looking for PTCGO codes, including the stuff from Silver Tempest, make sure you check out the Potown store. You can get a 5% discount on your orders using that code OmniPoke. For today's video, we're going to be looking at the Vstar Universe main set, which is coming out in Japan very soon. This is going to be part of our Crown Zenith set, and the ETB of that will be released on January 20th, and there's a ton of different promotional products like tins and special cards and stuff. This is only going to be like promotional products, no like booster boxes of this set, and that's going to be coming out periodically, closing the chapter on Sword and Shield. So other than having some amazing alt art cards to sort of marvel over, there are a handful of new ones that we can also acquire from this set. So we're going to be going over those today and talking about them. We'll start off with Simisear Vstar. We have a regular V already in the format. It's not too impressive at all. This guy has 260 hit points. It's obviously a fire type and has 2 retreat cost. It has the Fireball Fever for fire and 2 colorless. You do 40 damage plus 40 more for each of the top 5 cards that you discard from the top of your deck. So that's kind of the idea here. I mean, it's not really a big deal. You can choose to discard any amounts, but this is obviously a horrible effect. An Ember Vstar for 1 fire does 30x the number of energy cards in your discard pile. So you can see the synergy internally here. You're going to try and Fireball Fever away a ton of your cards in your deck, and ideally a lot of them are energy cards, and then you Ember Star as a big burst of damage later on. It's going to be a gimmick, nothing good to see here. We have a Radiant Charger Bug, which is a 90 hit point basic lightning type with 2 retreat. It has the Shock Block ability. Whenever a player attaches an energy from their hand to their Pokemon V, put 2 counters onto that Pokemon. Actually pretty cool and interesting text. A damage modifier like this is really nice. Obviously, if your opponent's attaching to their stuff manually, it's probably something that they're trying to weave in and attack with throughout the game. So putting some things a little bit closer in range of knockouts does seem relatively appealing. Nothing jumps out to me as like this goes straight into X deck. It could end up being like a Lugia card. Right now, Lugia, if it's the colorless build, could get away with having something like this, so you can save some powerful colorless energies, for example. That could be an interesting option, but it's just passive damage that your opponent can't really play around too easily. I don't think this is going to be barnstorming, because there aren't many things that are just shy of KOs that something like a Choice Belt or an Inteleon package or something wouldn't fix. And obviously we're still competing with Greninja and competing with Charizard, but I do think this is a good one in the mix because it is just a passive that can grant value throughout a game. Could be an interesting card in Arceus style decks that are lacking that damage just immediately, and now that your opponent's like attaching their stuff and getting damage circulating across the board, it could be something that keeps that archetype a little bit more relevant, which is okay. It also has a 1 for 30 snipe attack, but that's not too relevant. We have a Hatterine V, Psychic type with 200 hit points, very low number. We have the Horoscope for a Psychic. Look at the top 3 cards of your deck. Choose any number of energy you find there and attach them to this Pokemon. Return the remaining cards to the top of your deck in any order. So some nice, skewing your top deck in a good way, and maybe some acceleration. But if ever you're using this attack and hoping to survive, that really is because your opponent's bricked and no other reason why. You have the Teleport Break for 80. And switch, nothing to really write home about for especially that attack cost. The Hatterene Vmax is pretty interesting though. 320 hit point psychic type with a dark weakness. Dark, surprisingly, a pretty good weakness to have right now in the game because Drapion's the sort of only dark Pokemon in format essentially because it deals with Mew and there's no reason to deal with anything else. So that's actually pretty handy. And we have the Witch's Domain ability. Once during a turn, you may move up to 2 counters from one of your Pokemon to one of your opponent's, to your opponent's active Pokemon only. So this is really nice. It's healing and also, again, damage augmenting. Think about what we just said about the Charger Bug. It can help you reach on certain Pokemon, and obviously we could have multiple of these in play, so we could be healing multiple times over a turn. So I can see this being in some sort of like tanking deck. It would actually be, because of a card that we're going to look at in a moment, this Radiant Eternatus, that I actually feel like this card has promise. Normally I don't think it would be that worthwhile to be evolving up into a ton of stage 1s in your deck. It would take up too much space. But I could potentially foresee this going alongside this Radiant Eternatus package, where possibly these are the VMAXs that you try and get out, and having something like this double Witch's Domain in like a Blissey Miltank deck, for example, where the Blissey's constantly taking blows and you're using Hyper Potions and Hatterene all the time to increase your damage. That's really scary. So I think this could be a pretty cool option to have. It does have an attack. You do 150 and your opponent's active. is now confused. Again, nothing to really write home about, but this is probably going to be a bench sitter. And bench sitting Vmaxes is exactly what we want to start looking at, thanks to the Radiant Eternatus, which is a really spicy, really well-designed card, I think. It's a 170 hit points dragon-type Pokemon with, again, 2 retreat cost. It does have an attack for Fire, Dark, Colorless that does 200 damage, which is, I guess, somewhat relevant in certain instances, just in case we are going to play like random Mirage Gates or something, because these days we can attack with basically anything with Archeops and Mirage Gate. But this is really mostly about the ability here that gets me excited, the Climax Gate ability. Once during your turn, when you play this card from your hand onto your bench, you may search your deck for up to 2 Pokemon Vmax and put them directly onto your bench, then shuffle your deck. Your turn ends. So it does come with a bit of a fallback, but for setup, this is incredible. Just getting 1 Ultra Ball or 1 Quick Ball, going boom, Eternatus, double Vmax, your go, is absolutely insane. There's some great ability-based Vmaxes that I'm immediately looking at. Things like this Hatterine could be interesting. Things like Rayquaza Vmax for some cycle, some dig, some draw power. There's potential for Shadow Rider Calyrex Vmax as well, potentially. Just the fact that we can ignore these lower, vulnerable 200-ish hit point Pokemon is massive. And having these Vmaxes around is really, really powerful. It does give your opponent possibly that easy prize map, especially because we're passing into them with 2 Vmax Pokemon in play. They can get gutted up and such. But yeah, it seems like you set out your stall really nicely. Even something like an Urshifu could take advantage of this quite well. Because again, you're just avoiding that really awkward opener where you can have your 1v Pokemon just knocked out early by your opponent who's happened to have gone first against you, and suddenly you're on the back foot and you can't catch up. So this Eternatus is absolutely awesome for those sorts of approaches. I think this also could come alongside some weird, wacky Eldegoss loop deck as well, because again, you're going straight into VMAX Pokemon, which have huge hit points. These are typically great sponges in the game. So yeah, a lot of promise there. Just naming a few Vmaxes here, but even things like Duraludon, skipping that step and then finding other ways to accelerate towards it could be interesting. There's a lot of interesting Vmaxes that we can try and use here. Obviously, we can use this multiple times as well if you really want to. You just keep having to pass into your opponent, but if you are playing things like camo ponchos and stuff, you can make it so your opponent can't target some of your Vmaxes, and then yeah, it could be really interesting to create a very difficult prize map for people. So I think we're going to get creative with this Eternatus. Has a ton of promise. We also get a great Bidoof that has the nonchalant look. As long as this Pokemon is on your bench, it doesn't take any damage from attacks. That is great, actually. Giving yourself early game protection against Radiant Greninja, against Palkia, against Giratina players, because they're playing Radiant Greninja, of course, is absolutely monstrous. So even Lugia, now that it has a Radiant Raikou, amazing Raikou, I should say, protecting yourself from that is amazing. So definitely an upgrade in the Bibarel line, which is a welcome addition always. Regigigas is absolutely awesome, I think. 240 hit points is huge on a colorless mon as well, so you can remove your fighting weakness. It attacks for all colorless, and we've just seen how strong that is for Lugia, because you can take advantage of all sorts of special energy like V-Guard and whatnot. So this is a huge basic. It has Hammer in 2 for 50 and 3 for 110 more for each damage counter on this Pokemon. This Pokemon is now confused. Don't sleep on that Raging Blow. It could be an attack that we go for, actually, even if we have some like memory capsule plays on it, because you can really be striking back hard when we look at the fact that we have a Vstar with 300 hit points. Again, 300 hit points on a colorless mon, which means we can Sharon's it. It means we can use Dunsparce to again remove that weakness, which is just freaking insane. And yeah, it attacks for 3 colorless. It does the vanilla 230, which is already such a great number just for picking off regular Vs on your opponent's bench and keeping that tempo very nicely. It does have the downside that this Pokemon can't attack during your next turn, but I feel like this is, again, pretty reasonable because we can move in and out of this card and whatnot. Also why I mentioned the Raging Blow as a potential other attacking option. But 230, really great number. We're powerful colorless and choice belt away from the magical 280. That doesn't seem like too much work, because we're colorless, we can have all sorts of energy acceleration available. The things like Melanie or whatnot could be open to us. So yeah, very interesting card. I don't think it's quite good enough to be like a tech line in a Lugia or anything like that, but it's certainly interesting. I do also actually like this Star Guardian V-Star power. It's one of these powers that won't come off every game, but has massive power spike potential. you can use the ability during your turn if your opponent has one prize card remaining. Discard one of your opponent's benched Pokemon and all cards attached to it. So the idea being that your opponent is just one attack away from winning the game, essentially. And what you do is you use your Star Guardian to get rid of their benched attacker, and then ideally you Giga Impact through their active, so you knock out their active Pokemon, give yourself, ideally just one attack away to win the game after taking this knockout, but also you remove their backup attacker that they have going. So if you can do like a Star Guardian plus Giga Impact plus Roxanne, you're just like never losing that game from that position. So people have to play really weirdly around Regis in order to avoid the Star Guardian. And it's really cool. It's similar to how people have to play around B-string turns, this, that, and the other. Just by being an ability, a threat on board makes the opponent play differently and makes their map strange. They may start passing into you. They may start, just not being able to do what they want to on a certain turn and lose tempo without ever actually flipping your V-Star power marker. So really, really strong card. Very promising. And will be a cool deck to play, no doubt. Just the raw hit points numbers alone just give me so much hope for this card. Going to be absolutely awesome. We also get the Sky Sealing Stone tool as well, enabling a V Pokemon to use a V-Star power like we've seen with the other stones in our current set. And it's actually Star Order. You may use this ability during a turn when damage from the attack of your basic Pokemon V knocks out your opponent's V-Star or Vmax. You take an additional prize card. Very, very scary text. This was giving me vibes of way back when Zacian was first released and we got the Jirachi Mr. Mime combo and Tempo or Turbo Zacian was born as just basically a faster version of ADP Zacian at the time. We know that taking additional prizes is absolutely bonkers. VMAX and V-Star Pokemon are still dominating the game for the most part. Like, yes, this is dead against Regis and some Lost Box players, but it's live against a ton of other stuff, which is absolutely awesome to see. So I'm really, again, I think it shows a lot of promise. It's limited into the fact that it has to be a basic V Pokemon that's using this. So you have to pick your moment for it, but it should be very easy to achieve. Think about like a Suicune Ludicolo having a card like this, being able to take an extra prize and an actual uptrade finally on a V-Star or VMAX if you're doing like a big Ludicolo turn or something like that. You could think about Entei possibly, maybe even, well, Drapion would be laughing at Mew if it could take a 4-prize knockout on it. Because we have Mirage Gates and Lost Box builds, even teching in like things like Raikou to deal with Lugia these days, we could have, again, a sort of type coverage basic gate box, and the Sealing Stone could be the cherry on top to allow this random type coverage deck to actually work, because you take an uptrade finally during the game, and taking a 4-prize knockout of VMAX is so crazy. Gives you so many. You win in so few turns if you're able to take that free turn. So yeah, I mean, it's got stiff competition because a comp search is a crazy effect, but also this probably doesn't really compete because this isn't going to go into Mew more than likely. But because it's basic V Pokemon, which you're not really worried about unless we're going to start powering up a Genesect. It's more so going to be towards this different type coverage toolbox deck where we maybe have some Galarian birds in there, maybe some of these elemental legendary dogs. Those could, or beasts, I should say. People will get angry if I call them dogs. So yeah, I think this opens up some floodgates where we have like the Jirachi V, we have this, we have a few pieces circulating now to make a basic attacking V deck work. Could also be, like I said, part of a Lost Box build, especially if you play things like Raihan. You could cherry pick this, accelerate to your V Pokemon and smack. So that could be pretty interesting. So yeah, some really cool design space opening cards from this set. I think Reggie is probably going to be a deck, honestly, on its own. The Sky Sealing Stone opens up some avenues for some type coverage toolbox, 2-prize decks. Bidoof, definitely an upgrade that just goes immediately into decks. Eternatus, again, opens up some VMAX floodgates, which is really exciting. Hatterine could be a big beneficiary of that, which could be helping out some healing strategies. The Chargebug and the Hatterine are both interesting cards in terms of augmenting that damage as well in certain archetypes, and Simisear is useless. So almost every card we've looked at today has some intrigue, even though there's only a handful of new cards coming out from this set. I think it will be an impactful one, and definitely a fun one. It's one of these sets where we're going to be exploring with stuff throughout, and it gives us a throwback to VMAXs as well. I think this is actually one of the more interesting VMAXs that we could use, the Deoxys, which is currently a promo card, but we'll get it in the main set here. But yeah, some crazy artwork as well from this set to really marvel over. I think it's exceptional, some of these cards. So I'm certainly going to be getting a ton of packs from this set because there's just some incredible stuff. They've been knocking out the park. What a great way to sign off the trainer gallery for a small time. I'm sure at some point they're going to bring back the trainer gallery because it's such a hit with collectors. Players even like to bling out their decks if it's some of their favorite Pokemon in the mix as well. It's just such a hit. With everyone involved. So yeah, going to be an awesome set. Again, this starts in January, and I actually have the Crown Zenith products here that we've already got announced and revealed. But it's going to be a ton of like boxes and tins and stuff like this. We won't be getting like regular packs, I guess you could say. Basically filling gaps of promos that we haven't yet had from Japan. So this is a great way to do it. And yeah, also going to be great to start the year with some great new products, and we're going to get awesome Lucario Vstar as well. This is going to be a really cool set to open. So let me know your thoughts down below. Did I miss anything? Were there any other random combos you like with any of the cards that we discussed today? The Eternatus oozing with potential. I'll hear it all down below. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in another video tomorrow. Cheers.